Okay, so this is week 3 of the Wholehearted Living course, and I am really excited about this program. I've taught this program for this part of this program a few times before. In this program, we go in more depth on what it is to live a wholehearted life. So a life of joy, of compassion, of trust, and to be able to work more deeply and intimately with that. And it takes some work, but part of it is being able to create awareness around it. So each week we talk about different topics, and each topic goes a little bit deeper, but still reflects on the things that happened before. So it's working in layers to be able to create more depth in our life and be able to create more awareness of where we're at in our life. So today we're going to be talking about reciprocity, how we take or steal from ourselves, how we steal from others, and how we steal from our environment or nature, competency and gratitude, and a little bit into compassion. So again, these things will be talked about throughout the weeks as we go through, and they will all reflect on week 2 and week 1, which we've already had. All the recordings will be posted on the social media, so you can check that out. The website, I'm doing a bunch of redoing of the website, but in the process, I'm trying to get everything up as quickly as possible. It is on all the social media accounts, including my account. So if you want any more information or if you have any questions, you can always contact me. And then you can check out the website and you can contact me through there, or you can, if you're on social media, you can contact me through there. All right, so we'll get started. Non-stealing. So non-stealing, the obvious is that we don't take something from somebody else, not take their property, taking their stuff, that kind of thing. But stealing has a bigger concept than that. So we're going to talk about stealing in the way of taking, and taking what we don't need, taking what we don't necessarily deserve. And I don't mean that we don't deserve everything in the world or every possibility in the world. I'm talking about the more specific things of how we have a tendency to covet other people's stuff, how we tend to have a tendency of feeling a lack of. And our society promotes this. Like, we are being flooded by the things that we don't have, the things that we can't afford. And we have these little things called credit cards where we don't really have to manage money all that well because it's on credit. We can pay for it later. Having a house payment, that's kind of a rite of passage type thing, but having payments on absolutely everything, if we took time to actually track how many payments we make on things that maybe we need or don't need, it would probably be pretty significant. Most of us don't track our money to the exact cent. I do because I run a business, but that's a little bit different thing. Especially when you can write off certain things, you can't write off certain things. Like, it definitely makes it a little different for that. So knowing the difference between need, and then need meaning what we need to survive and what we need to thrive. So the obvious things that we need is shelter and food and support. So things that we need in our life versus the things that we want or desire. So those are the add-ons, the bonuses in life. And for some of us, we have more bonuses than what we actually need. And, living as Americans, we definitely have a lot more than what we actually need in our life. I mean, how many of us have multiple cars or multiple toys or multiple devices? I'm looking at 3 of them right now. So I'm recording on 3 different devices at the same time. And that's a little excessive, but at the same time, I can say, oh, it's a business expense, but is it necessary? Probably not. So looking at our life and seeing where do we overindulge in, and this can happen in pretty much every aspect of our life, from food all the way to, coveting somebody else's home, or trying to keep up with the Joneses, or things that we want or people that we want in our lives, like being jealous of our friends because of some of the friends they have, or being jealous of our friend because of their spouse. So really looking to examining our lives a little bit more. So seeing how we take from others, nature and self, and how we steal from the future. So stealing from the future would be more of that concept of taking from nature, but also stealing from the future in the way of not allowing them to experience life completely. And this is showing up as people grow up and change. So we're seeing less of people growing up with a sense of responsibility, and seeing people grow up with the sense of this is what I should have because I deserve it. And having a sense of responsibility is completely different. So depending upon what age you'll get that, because those of us that are a little bit on the older end, it's like some of the things that we've been through in our life has really influenced it. And a lot of it has to do with our parents. Our parents were probably boomers or older, maybe Great Depression era. And they're definitely going to have a different influence on our life than what our generation raising kids or my generation raising kids, which would be Gen Xers into the millennials and the millennials and so on. So looking at, what culture you grew up in, because that's completely different, and how society impacted that. So we can't always blame the parents. It's how the society looked at how we were supposed to raise kids or how we were supposed to be and what was socially and culturally acceptable. So, we can blame parents and this and that. It's like, yeah, okay, yes, but there's also that cultural component to it. And I talked about culture last week and how that influence in truthfulness. And then the week before we talked about non-harming and how that affects it. So we're going to see those reflect throughout this talk also. And we live in a society of lack or scarcity, and lack of scarcity is that sense of fear that is behind that. So fear of not being enough, having enough, being able to along with our internal battles, right? Like we see the internal battle of ourselves where we're fighting our authenticity, our inner soul self with what society expects from us. And we've all experienced this in our life where we haven't been our authentic self. We put on a mask to be able to go to work or to be able to be in the dating community. For me, it's like dating. And it's like, well, I've gotten to the point where if people don't like me, there's nothing I can do about it. I'll be nice and I'll be polite and I'll be me. But if I'm not going to be somebody else to impress somebody, because that's not what they're going to get when they're with me. So I figure, in dating, it's important to be able to really be who you are. And if you don't know who that is, then being able to work on yourself before you are in that situation. So whether it be dating, whether it be even in your current relationship. So if you're married, how much have you changed? And has it been growing? Are you growing together? Are you growing apart? And what aspects play a part in that? All right. So going back to the topic, take from others. So when we think about taking from others, it is in this way of comparing ourselves to others. How do we compare ourselves to others? Are we constantly doing that? Oh, they have this, they are able to do this, they adopt, all of that kind of stuff. So a feeling of lack, a feeling of being cheated. Well, I didn't get that opportunity, so I don't have that. And then feeling superior. So completely on the opposite end, where it's like, oh, haha, look at them. I have so much more. And that sense of arrogance and that sense of like, I'm better than everybody else. So there's that double swing on that. Also living vicariously through others. Noticing when we do that, it's one thing to live vicariously and to say, oh my gosh, what a fantastic trip so-and-so had. Oh, I love seeing their pictures, and really meaning it. Or is there a sense of, oh, I wish I had the money to go on it. Oh, it must be nice to be able to go on it. How often do we say that when we're scrolling on Facebook and we see somebody go on a fantastic trip and they're so excited about it? It's probably not that they're boasting about it. They're probably authentically happy that they finally got to go on a vacation after 2 years of being shut down and not being able to do anything or be able to explore. And now they're able to travel and they're sharing it with you. And you're just like, oh, it must be nice to do that. It must be nice to have the money to do that. Oh, I wish I could do that. Well, are we taking the initiative? Are we taking responsibility to be able to have that opportunity? Not saying there isn't, I'm just saying, are we? All right. Another way that we take away from others is when we're having conversations. So think of, we talked about last week and the week before about like empathy and fixing. So being able to build trust and be able to build relationships and be able to build foundations in relationships. And foundations come with building trust and being authentic. And often what happens is when we're with a friend or with an acquaintance, how well do we really listen to them? Do we listen to the words that they're saying, and do we feel their emotions around it? So that's part of empathy, is really being able to step in their situation. And you can have empathy in both directions. Empathy doesn't have to be towards the sympathy side, so always towards bad things, but also being able to step in their situation when they're excited. Can you be excited? Can you authentically be excited with them? Can you embrace with them their excitement? The way that we downplay this is we one up them. Or we're thinking about our own story in our head, so we think we contribute to their conversation, when in reality, we cut them down. So somebody's sharing this awesome story that they went on this great trip and they were so excited to share with you all, some of the details, because they actually maybe thought of you during that time. And then what happens is you say, oh, well, I went on this trip, and you basically downplay their story. You one up them. And so what this does is it completely diminishes them. And they might not show it on the external, but on the internal, they're going, they never even heard what I said, or they never even cared what I said. I experienced that with different friends. I have friends that are very, very good at listening and really holding space for me. And those are the friends I go to when I'm struggling, or when I feel like I need some support. And then I have friends that will try to deter the conversation, whether they do it on purpose or not. If we're not aware of it, I suppose it's not on purpose, but being aware of it is a big deal, because that connection, that being able to step in their shoes, whether it be something exciting or whether it be something sad, is a huge thing. And it can take a lot of practice, and you can learn that part. But really embracing the person where they are at, versus trying to think of your story or trying to think of what you can do to fix them. So we talked about that the last 2 weeks, is fixing versus, holding space and being present. So when we hold space, when we are empathetic, and this lingo goes around a lot right now that everybody's an empath, and it's like, are you? Do you truly listen to what people say? And I'm not saying that you're not. I'm just saying, really check yourself when you're using some of this terminology. I mean, this new age terminology is getting slung around, and it's like, do we really understand what that means and what that really means? And I often get told that I'm a good listener. I'm a trained good listener. I have worked so hard on it, and I've been trained in all of my styles of practices, whether it be Ayurveda, or whether it be yoga therapy, or whether it's cranial sacral, to get into that space of really listening and not making it about me at all, other than the fact that I'm embracing their situation. I'm embracing whatever they have right now. So when we get in this situation where we want to fix things or change things or manipulate things, this creates a problem, and it turns our focus on ourselves versus having their story be their story and holding space for them and really being present. So this is something to practice. And you can practice. We have every opportunity all the time to be able to practice. And one of the things that I say to myself is, what I'm going to contribute going to improve the quality of silence. And one of my friends really got on me about this, because he's like, you never respond back. And I'm like, because I don't have anything that's going to contribute to the conversation right now, or I have to think about it. And, sometimes that's not needed. And sometimes just holding the space for them is more important. And in our culture, we're very uncomfortable with awkward silences, that time of not saying anything. So how many of us are really uncomfortable with silence, where they can't sit in silence when there's another person around? Just kind of check yourself, kind of see where that's at, and see, how you can maybe hold space for people around you more often. Because this builds trust. It builds really deep relationships. Let's see. So taking away from the earth. So this is where we're living outside of our means. So we're buying more stuff and more stuff, buying a bigger house to fill more stuff. So often that happens when we realize how much stuff we have when we move, right? I've moved a couple of times now in the last 5 years. And in that process, I've downsized. And now as I look at stuff in my house, I'm like, I don't need a lot of this. I flip my wardrobe because I've got such a small closet. And I'm starting to look at things and go, I really don't need even half of this stuff. So as I start to switch, I'm starting to just downsize everything, because if I move again, I don't want to be moving all that stuff for one thing, and I don't want to accumulate anymore. And how often do we, when we accumulate, do we get rid of things on the other end? Or how often do we save it or put it away or put it into storage? Storage for what? For the next time we're going to use it? I know we can all laugh at that one, right? So looking at how we take away from nature. So being aware of the ways that we take away from nature. So that's also taking away from our future. So if we're depleting everything, and the big lingo is right now about how we're depleting everything and how we're ruining the environment and this and that. And there's some of us that are working very hard to be able to sustain that, where we're living in a more sustainable yard. Like I have chickens, and my chickens don't use a lot of external food or feed because they go around my yard, they scratch at things, they get compost. I garden a lot. My dad also has a farm, so I am able to go down there and harvest fruits and vegetables and stuff like that because I have a second garden there, and being able to really use in that balance of nature. So how do you contribute in that way to be able to balance things out? Are you one of those people that buys from certain companies because they plant trees? Or see how you support nature and how you deplete it. So look at that different. Look at things a little bit differently when you see that kind of stuff. All right. So I think I missed a page here. Oh, wow. Okay. How we take away from ourselves. So looking at how we take away from ourselves is really multi-layered. So we can take away from ourselves by stealing from our own uniqueness. So this is where we wear those masks, where we don't take the time to say, is this really my truth? Is this really what I enjoy? Where we say yes to everything, where we, when we feel a lack of in our life, when we feel a lack of attention from people on social media, or if we feel a lack of attention from our partner, or we feel a lack of attention from whatever the source may be, what do we fill it with? Do we take time to be able to fill it with things that are nourishing, that create depth, that create more vitality? Or do we find things to fill in the gaps, like buying things? Or if we're in a relationship, do we go and look on, many of the platforms for dating to be able to get attention from somebody else? So how are we trying to fill the void, and are we being our authentic self? And when we do these kind of things, we take away from our uniqueness, when we accumulate all these demands. So the different demands that we have are our full schedules, all of our appointments, all of our meetings, all of our overworking and overbooking in our lives. We really take away from our enthusiasm of life. I mean, how many of us can just say, oh my gosh, my life is the best? And I have taken this, so I've did this course many times. I taught it in my teacher training program. I've had it taught to me from my teachers. And every time I peel off layers and layers of things that I need to work on. And sometimes I'm not ready for a certain layer, but when I revisit it, I peel off another chunk. So when we look at this, how can we, find more enthusiasm in our life? How can we create more balance in our lives? And often we look at it as, I'm trying to create work-life balance. It doesn't exist. It doesn't exist in a 50-50, unless you've created a life that involves that. But in most cases, we're going to work for a significant amount of time in our week, and then we're going to have our other time. But what do we do with that other time? Do we do things that help enrich our lives, help build vitality and nurture us and create depth of relationships? Or do we keep things superficial? It's just something to consider. We can also look at how we self-sabotage ourselves. And this is our negative mindset, maybe our thought patterns, and this can be from the past, and this can be anticipating the future and seeing how we self-sabotage. Lack of believing in ourselves and low self-esteem. And again, this is something that can be something from the past, but at the same time, if you're not working on it, you're just staying stagnant in that hole. So how can you do things to be able to take steps forward, to be able to work on some of these things that are not creating our best self? Because when we bring forth our best self, we are a vibrant structure in other people's lives also, because we often can lead by example. So being able, we would try to work on changing people's minds, right? Like that's our culture, is like, I'm going to change your mind because you don't agree with what I agree with what I'm talking about. And I'm giving you the opportunity to be able to say, hey, these are just things to be able to look at and see, are you living your best life? And what's holding you back? What's really holding you back? So looking at different parts of your life and how you're trying to fill it with things that aren't making you more complete, that aren't creating vitality of life. Another thing is looking at perfectionism. So I'm a recovering perfectionist. I say that because even in my everything that I did, including my art, so I'm a painter also, the fine details, I would use brushes that were like 3 hairs, like just to make these really fine details. And I have since changed my painting a lot to more dramatic colors that aren't the true colors of like skin tones or whatever it may be. And it's so much more freeing. So looking at times in our life where we're trying to be so finite, so tiny, so detailed, so perfect, and being able to play a little bit more. So those of you that have kids, you're fortunate because they bring play in all the time, and they bring in the most detailed, weird stuff that you would never even see because we're so busy looking future or stuck in the past that we don't see these little details. So being able to look through a kid's eyes is pretty amazing. It's definitely a gift. I look through my dog's eyes because he sees things that I don't see. And I'm just like, what are you looking at, Rufus? And then we'll both look at the same thing and I see what he sees. So being able to really create more play in your life. We also have this belonging, what our belongings do to us. So when we have a lot of stuff, it holds us back from doing things also. And our mental idealism. So creating this identity that goes along with the stuff that we have, that we're supposed to have this stuff in order to be able to live this life. And is that your truth? For some of you, maybe. For most of us, it's not. So knowing where to create these boundaries, knowing where to be able to create more flexibility in your life, or be able to cut things out. When you look at your schedules, it's so packed full that you can't meet up with friends, which are going to help fill your cup. The people that bring life to you, that help ground you, that help support you, that would jump in front of a bus for you. Like, look at your life and see, where can you find more balance? And again, it's not going to be in time, it's going to be in quality. Okay. So also looking at, we don't take enough time to be able to digest our life. So we have our schedule so packed, so busy, so detailed and messy, really, because we're probably wasting a lot of time in that process, because a lot of things we do, we really don't need to be doing. I look at my list sometimes and then I have to go through and go, how much of the stuff do I really have to do? And how much can I just let slide because it's going to disappear eventually? And every time we look at our schedules, we can say, oh, everything's so important. Everything's, is so important. Really? How much of it is really just a bunch of stuff we put on the list just to make a list? I'm guilty of this too. So I totally get it. All right. So we don't take time to be able to digest our life. So we talk so much about like food and digesting food. It's kind of the same thing. So we want to be able to take that time to be able to digest our life, to be able to digest it and then process it, so assimilate it, and then integrate what we want to change and what we want to evolve, or what we want to add more or take away. So really taking time to be able to digest our life. And we don't often do this. We go from one thing to the next, and the next, and the next, and our kids are overscheduled and they're exhausted and we're exhausted. And then by that time we're ready to go on vacation, and we can't go on the vacation because we got so much stuff to do. When we go on vacation, we crash. How many of us had that experience where we went on a vacation and literally crashed? I had that just this last year. I went on this vacation. I was so excited to be able to get away and do this road trip. And I ended up sleeping almost the whole trip. I was exhausted, and realizing that over the last 15, 20 years, I've been working myself completely to the bone. And it was because I was trying to run businesses and keep businesses open and be able to figure out different ideas to be able to keep the business open. In reality, all I wanted to do is be able to have a small community, a tribe, to be able to incorporate different things and be able to inspire them to grow and change and evolve and do different things, experiment with different things, and have a different, listen to a different philosophy maybe that they hadn't heard before or something. So look at how you are in your life. And if you sit down and you fall asleep instantly, how exhausted are you? Or you're so exhausted that your body doesn't even have enough energy to go to sleep. So I talk about this in my other course that I have, and we talk about lifestyle and sleep and nutrition and energy management. And so often we think if we're so exhausted, we should be able to sleep well. And sometimes when we're so exhausted, our body doesn't even have enough energy to be able to release enough hormones to be able to go to sleep. That's kind of a sketchy comment. Like, that's intense to be able to think that, too exhausted to be able to sleep. And I see it all the time in clients, but they're literally too exhausted to sleep. They're like, I'm so exhausted, I don't know why I can sleep. Can't sleep. It's because their body is running on cortisol and adrenaline all the time to be able to keep up, to keep going, coffee, stimulants of some kind, sugar, all of that kind of stuff to be able to keep going. So how often do we do that? How often do we stimulate our life with external stuff to be able to feel like we're doing something when actually we're just running on a treadmill? I said that the other day to a friend of mine. I'm like, just feel like I'm running on a treadmill right now. And he's like, well, get off the treadmill and start running your marathon. I'm like, okay. So I did. And that helped out a lot. Sometimes I just need somebody else to tell me what to do. All right. So one other thing we'll talk about is gratitude. Again, this is one of the modern lingo slings that goes around that, oh, be grateful. Oh, say what you're grateful for. It is life-changing. And I'm going to be a big promoter, and we'll talk about this in the next few weeks also, is what are you grateful for? Because often this can shift everything from lack of to what I have. And I do this to my friends sometimes, where I'll send them a text message. I'll be like, what you grateful for? Give me 3 of them. And I need an explanation for why. So you can't just say my house, my car, my family. Well, okay, that's great, but why? So after a few times, they kind of get it, because I usually put what I'm grateful for. And it's just what I'm grateful for in the moment. That's why we want to do gratitude every night before we go to bed. And it might be things that are good things, meaning, oh, I got a job promotion, or, oh, I was able to spend time with my mom in the nursing home, or whatever it may be. Or it might be something that is challenging that you overcame, or you're thankful for the challenge because it distracted you from something else that maybe wasn't as productive. I found that in my life, that all the challenges in my life have been given to me as a gift to be able to grow and evolve and hopefully be able to connect with other people that are going through the same thing. And I look at those challenges as my greatest gifts, because the things that came easy to me in my life, I don't have as much appreciation for than the things that I worked extremely hard for. So think about that also in your life, like things you've overcome is training you for things that are going to come, and be able to work through them quicker and be able to work through them more efficiently. So if we keep on being distracted by something that keeps on coming in and challenging us, look at that challenge as an opportunity to be able to overcome it and practice for other things that are going to happen. Because other things are going to happen. We're going to have challenges, whether it's something that happens in our health, something that happens to our family, something that happens in our life, our career. Things change, and it's inevitable. So how do we process and deal with it? How do we work through it? So that gives you a whole bunch of information. Like I said, I'm doing a whole course on this in 2022. It'll be on my website and we'll go into great detail, and there'll be practices and there'll be a whole bunch of questions and different things to be able to go through, plus interaction with me. So there'll be meeting dates that'll meet every week to go over the topics that we'll cover and break down. And I'm going to have two different versions. I'm going to have a how to grow and how to evolve in your life, and the second one will be actually more on the Christian side. So we'll be studying how faith is a huge anchor in all of these. So there'll be two different ones. It doesn't matter which one, whatever one draws your attention, whatever you feel is you feel you connect with. They're both based on spiritual practices. One's just has a religious connection to it. The other one will be working on, self and being able to connect with self, to be able to have that connection with nature, with moving forward into a deeper path in life. So I hope you have a lovely evening. Thank you.